very warm welcome to ET CFO presents ET Studio CFO Blueprint in partnership with SAP. I'm your host Divina Lasson. Now in this series, we're thrilled to bring you conversations with India's leading CFOs to help us get unique insights about the journey of the modern CFO. Now in today's episode, we look at perspective from CFO lens, navigating compliance in 2024 and beyond. We're happy to partner with SAP, a market leader in enterprise application software. Now, SAP recently announced a program for startups called Grow with SAP for Scale-Ups. As part of this program is a community called the Hyper Growth Hub that puts startup leaders in the spotlight through exciting programs like CFO Blueprint. So on this episode, we take a look at the ever-changing landscape of compliance through the lens of the CFO. Join us as we delve into the challenges and the opportunities of navigating compliance in 2024 and beyond. Here to help us deep dive into this and much more, it's my pleasure to welcome very esteemed guests today. We have joining us Vipul Agarwal, CFO Ecom Express, and Nitesh Patwari, Group Head Finance, Bombay Shaving Company. Gentlemen, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, we're here to talk about a really tricky but of course fundamental topic, which is compliance 2024 and beyond. And it would be great if we can kickstart the conversation with each of you just helping us understand the lay of the land as you see it in your experience when it comes to the biggest challenges that you face in compliance in your industries, as your experience as CFOs, and what are some of the crucial and vital steps that you see as being effective in dealing with these challenges? Vipul, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. So thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me here. It's a privilege and honor. I represent Ecom Express.
Yes.
I am working here as a CFO. Ecom Express is a tech-enabled logistics company in e-commerce space. So if you see, basically we deliver shipments from one place to another,
Sure.
and on an average we deliver 5.5 crore to shipments in a month.
Yes.
Okay. So we have, significantly large operations at pan-India level. I would say we cater to, let's say, 27,000 pin codes,
Wow.
3,000 cities,
Wow.
3,500 facilities, 50 to 60,000 manpower.
Wow.
Okay, so operations are huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you ask me, what kind of challenges are there in my company or in similar company, I would say 3,500 locations itself.
Yes.
Because I need to be compliant for each and every location. There are so many laws. Okay, if let's say every location has 5 to 6 compliances or 7 compliances, then my total compliance is like 18 to 20,000.
Yes.
In a year.
That's
okay.
immense.
Similarly, as I mentioned, we are in every corner of India. So all state laws,
Yes.
these central laws, and
Yes.
at times the municipal laws are applicable.
Sure.
Next, I would say that when we have such remote, functionality or operations, we need to be compliant in each and every location.
Yes.
From central office, we can monitor, but we need to make people accountable at, different location in a decentralized manner. And for those guys, educating them, training
Yes.
them, if there's a compliance coming up, following up with them, is a challenge. And there are ways how do you handle it.
Sure.
Another point I would mention that when you have to do the compliances in such a remote fashion, at times there are basically attrition. There is attrition. People are
Absolutely,
leaving. Then
yes.
again, because of the
Yes.
churn, training them and all those
Yes.
things. How do we manage, or how we have been managing? I think, in my view, compliance, is an obligation, not a choice. Okay, and it's a culture.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the tone at the top, from the board, from the senior management, is very, very important.
Yes.
Driving the agenda is very, very important. But I think the most important thing is to know that what are the compliances which I need to be compliant.
Mm.
So you need to understand the entire universe of law which is applicable on you. Okay. Define those compliances. What are the frequencies?
Yes.
Who are the owners who will basically take the responsibility that I will, comply with this
Yes.
particular requirement, and then create a tool around it.
Sure.
Because otherwise you can't monitor.
Sure.
And then just, follow up and make sure that, whatever compliance is getting due, we are fully compliant.
Yes. Wonderful. Wow, that's, really a vast ocean of compliance that you are obviously dealing with. So thank you for laying out how you do that. Let's get you in on this, Nitesh. So very interesting. Of course, we hear that it's mandatory. Of course, it's not an option at all. It's an obligation for organizations. So how do you face? What challenges do you face, and how do you address them?
So I represent Bombay Shaving Company as a group head of finance and legal, and we are an FMCG company. And FMCG has a diversified portfolio when we talk about compliances, right? Would it be a product labeling, or would it be a like label laws, or it can be a kind of social regulations and all, especially when we come into like legal metrology compliances, right? So ocean of compliances, to be very honest, but I feel compliances has to be a heartbeat for any organization, to be very honest. Right? And what we see that in our cases, especially when we are a startup ecosystem company, where due to the lack of resources in terms of the huge capital allocation, we operate into a contract manufacturing based organization, right? So when you deal with contract manufacturers, it equally becomes important for you whether your manufacturers are equally compliant or not, right?
Absolutely, of course.
One is definitely the ethical sourcing that we are doing on it. So managing our compliance base as well as taking care of or tracking the compliance base that our manufacturers are having is equally important for us in the organization. Second, we are a D2C company, D2C brand, right? Data privacy and protection becomes a huge compliance that needs to be taken care of, because the penalty is huge. So how you are protecting your data, because you are privy or access to a lot of consumer data when you sell directly or interact directly with consumers. So protection of consumer data is equally and is inevitable for us as a company, and the penalty is also huge. So how you create an access to the information, restrict the information access, and create the entire infrastructure in such a way so that, like for an example, no one can get into your data and hack your data. So your data privacy and protection becomes a solid thing. So these are the buckets where we see that as a compliances, how we are complying, because financial compliances are logically easy to manage. But when it comes to other regulatory compliances, which kind of what I feel is indirectly linked with the kind of risk that you are associated with, like reputational risk becomes a lot of things. So these are the challenges, how you comply. And what I feel is now we can do only through automation and technology. Because otherwise it becomes very difficult. It is not possible for any human being to manage the compliances in India right now, when the compliances are changing every alternate day. So how you enable your technology and automate in such a manner so that you are access or you are privy to all the updates on time, and then can get into your high, medium, low risk kind of compliances, so that you can actually plan it very well, and can have some kind of sensibility in terms of which compliances are at any point in time is non-negotiable in terms of company's reputational risk and financial risk as well, because it ultimately affects your bottom line.
Of course.
So that is how we measure the compliance. Regarding how we do that, definitely what I feel as a CFO for the organization is compliances is not one's job. It is a job for all the individual in the company. We are operating with around more than 200 people in our payroll system right now. So if 75% or 80% of the employees are not adhere or is not aware about the sensitivity of the compliances, it is always difficult to manage, right?
Of course.
Because if someone fails in one, company suffers a lot. So that is how we inculcate the culture, which people had talked about, the culture of the compliances, like how you inculcate the culture of the compliances into the system, into an organization, which has to be top driven, not bottom up. So that is how we generate. We do some kind of trainings on a quarterly basis, like what are the updates in the compliances, what are the misses that we had done in the past some quarters, of the learning that we do. So that is how we manage right now.
Right. Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. That really gives a clear snapshot on how much the role of the CFO also plays. Needless to say, financial compliance is one, but like you said, the reputation of the organization at large is also very much at stake here. So could each of you also kind of help us see how exactly the role of the CFO plays into this? It's obviously extremely critical when it comes to compliance in any organization. So how would you summarize the role of the CFO in upholding compliance in the organization?
Okay. So I would say, by and large, if you see, CFOs are, either chartered accountants or,
Yep.
some qualified professionals. So basically, we read law when we are doing our professional courses.
Yes.
So I think first and foremost thing is that we have the awareness of the corporate laws and what all compliances we need to do.
Yes.
More than that, if we do not comply, what could be the repercussions?
Yes.
I think that is very, very important, point
Sure.
number one. Second, I would say that CFO probably in the best situation in the company who understands the business and functionality of all the functions.
Yes.
Okay. Third, I would say CFO works very, very closely, let's say, with the board. You are the face for the independent directors. CFOs are KMPs, so your skin is also in the game.
Yeah.
Okay. So in my view, and I have seen from my personal experience, basically CFO through enterprise risk management or compliance management is the best person to drive this agenda in any organization.
Yeah, sure. Wonderful. Nitesh, I'm sure agreement on this point?
Yeah, I totally agree with this, because ultimately now CFO is also responsible for any non-compliances.
Yes.
Exactly.
So
We are the KMPs,
in a way or two, CFOs are the person who drive the entire compliances in the company, and actually we play a role of, or we bridge the gap between the internal and the external stakeholder management, be it investor, be it board, be it the external partners, or be it our internal team or the other channel heads or any
Yeah.
internal team, right?
Yeah.
So making them understand the sensitivity and everything lies
Sure.
definitely on CEO, and all the compliances, if non-compliant, will directly attract the bottom line. So I always say that the CFO drives the bottom line
Yes.
and the CEO always drives the top line,
Right.
to be very honest.
Right. Right.
So keeping the growth intact, how you manages the entire bottom line, or in fact grows the bottom line, totally depends upon you.
Yes.
And even if it is a single rupee of payment against interest or penalty, it is a non-compliant.
Absolutely.
So either it is 100% compliant or it is non-compliant.
Yes.
That is how we see
Yes.
as a compliance.
Wonderful.
So there is no midway.
Yeah.
There is
Absolutely.
always non-compliant or compliant, or kuch hota hi nahi hai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's the way CFO has to drive the entire compliance, and we see that is the core KPI for any CFO to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So just to add, CFOs basically, monitor the bottom line. We have seen in recent past that many organizations have gone down the drain because of bad compliances and controls
Right.
and
Yes.
governance.
Yes. Yes.
So in my view, as I mentioned, compliance, is an obligation, not a choice. It can hit your bottom line also very, very
Absolutely.
seriously, and reputational damage also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to add, of course, another layer to this is not only compliance, but regulations keep changing all the time.
Absolutely.
How do you keep up with that?
So, ignorance of law is not an excuse.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't say, oh, this new law came and we were not aware. So either you have, internal experts, or you have
Yeah.
some, services from the external experts, and there are many law firms and big fours, they provide these services. That once you have defined your, on a particular date, these are the compliances, I'm supposed to do. But you always have to be aware that what are the changes which are taking place.
Yes.
So there is support, internal or
Yes.
external. So
Yeah.
you continuously need to improve your compliance framework and be aware about it.
Yes, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Nitesh, of course, automation is absolutely vital, right, to keep track of everything. So can you give us maybe an example of how you're tapping into automation to keep up with compliance and the changes in regulations?
So there are two ways. Right now, we have already implemented one of the software which track the entire and integrated with our
Okay.
system,
Okay.
which track the entire compliances and any changes that come in, which intimate directly to us. And then there are a kind of hierarchical system for access to information, and then creating an audit trail also. That is number one. Second, now we are trying to establish our own infrastructure internally with the help of our development team,
Sure.
where we can have more robust system in terms of how each calculation can take place immediately,
Okay.
and then have an understanding that, and then the stinker mill can go before the due date and all that. Now
Sure.
this is something that we need to follow, and any new compliances that coming in which impacts our industry in a very large scale, that should be informed very well to
Okay.
us. That is number one. So ideally automation through AI powered tool and all brings a lot, but in future that also need to be seen that any automation brings a lot of transparency.
Yes.
So how you protect that transparency
Yes.
becomes a challenging part,
Yes.
which needs to be explored for at all the angles, to be very honest.
Yes.
So whether it's a chat GPT or AI or anything, whatever we write, it ultimately gets recorded somewhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that transparency and protection of that transparency is yet to be explored, which I feel is not yet there in the
Okay.
ecosystem at this point in time, but that is something which we need to look for
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
get into an automation.
Right, right. So surely it sounds like there's also an element of just training your in-house team, right? Whether be it to keep up with the tools, the automation
Yeah.
tools, or just be compliance savvy. And on top of it, like you said, not being aware of any of the laws is absolutely no excuse. So how do you ensure that kind of training of your teams to be completely at the helm of what's happening can take
So
place?
in regarding training, what we have done, we had first identified the training need access for the
Okay.
individual, because every individual should not be aware about every compliances. Then it is like we know everything, but we do not know anything, right?
Yeah.
So training need identification department wise that we have created, and then the training modules, like what will be the training that needs to be there. Then actually the case studies, which is relatable to the topic that we are trying to train the people, and again that then examination and then the feedback.
Okay.
That is how we have created the training module, where we kind of try to give the live examples with the live case studies that have
Sure.
been done in the past, which kind of very relatable to our industry and the kind of compliances that we need to manage.
Right.
And that is how we train the employee, and then on a frequency we see that how the compliances are taking place on a regular basis.
Yes,
If
yes.
there is any lapse, then definitely we train and retrain.
Right.
That is something, that mantra that we follow. And then the specific audit that we used to do.
Yeah.
So what is the compliance audit like? On a quarterly basis, we do some kind of audit in our for our products, and also that we are pretty clear that whenever we are going for any launch of our products, we are fully compliant in terms of legal metrology and everything. That is a third party audit that we do.
Right. Of
So
course.
so emotion doesn't come in place when we talk about compliance.
Yeah.
That is the like non-negotiable factor that we do, that
Yes.
there has to be an audit for
Yes.
the compliance.
Yes, yes. So really robust program basically in place on all fronts.
Yes, we are trying to
Sure.
do that.
Yeah.
Not exactly a robust, but yes, we are also learning into the system.
Sure. Well,
know-
I mean, of course, yeah, please.
Sorry, one thing I would like to add, that fixing the ownership at the senior level is also
Yeah.
very, very important.
Yes.
Because normally compliance is done, or compliance evidence is produced by the junior guys, but if there is any problem in at least our organization, the senior most guy or the CSOs are
Yes.
responsible for
Yes.
their respective
Agree.
functions or
Yes,
areas.
yes.
So that also plays a very, very important role.
Absolutely. Top down,
And
as you
it
said.
really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you see in that case, in general, compliance practices evolving in the coming years?
So I would say, couple of areas, which would have greater attention and focus, and I think the regulatory environment will be more difficult. One, clearly I see, the laws around data privacy,
Yes,
cybersecurity.
absolutely, yeah.
Second, I feel, the laws related to environment, social, governance and all those things. Already we are seeing that for top listed companies, you have to do ESG reporting and all,
Yes,
but in my
yes.
view, that will be expanded, for other companies. And I think the repercussions could be serious if you are in non-compliance. Third, I would say that, the laws around labor codes
Yes,
will
okay.
definitely change, because I think the regulators, they want to provide more and more social security benefits, to
Yeah.
the blue collar workforce. And fourth, I would say that laws around financial reporting,
Okay, sure. Yeah.
data governance and all those things. So let's say, one example I can give you, maintenance of audit trail in your ERP.
Yeah. Yeah.
This law actually came last year.
Yes.
Now government and regulators, they are following it in a very, very strict manner.
Yeah.
So maintaining audit trail for any ERP, in master data or actual data, I think is very clear indication that, the financial reporting governance will be quite stringent as we
Yes.
move forward.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Nitesh, anything to add to this? Sort of the most challenging areas when it comes to compliance practices that you foresee coming in the next few years?
See, number one is on the kind of that we discussed right now on the AI, like the laws and regulations on what are the transparency and visibility for the when we get into an entire
Yeah.
AI mode. That is
Yeah.
number one, which needs to be cleared very well. Data privacy that we talked about. The ESG regulation, I believe, would be very crucial. We have started seeing that already. That for any investors, like for an example, if you are into the commodity business and if you are trying to set up a manufacturing plant for any commodity business, either in India or outside India,
Yeah.
ESG becomes a mandate for any investors
Yes,
to
yes,
put
yes,
money in.
Yes, yes.
Like for an example, in my last organization before I was a part of Bombay Shaving Company, we had taken a funding for our one of our IVC. So there the mandatory requirement was the ESG compliance.
Yes, of course.
And
absolutely.
that is number one that I see is easy to say but very difficult to manage, right? When we talk about the carbon footprint, how you minimizes the environmental footprint,
Yes,
that
yes.
whether it is a carbon emission or kind of packaging, kind of plastic waste generation becomes a very challenging. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
So, and apart from that, cyber security, data protection, supply chain risk management will be huge. That
Sure.
that
yes.
needs to be looked after.
Yes.
So these are the 4 buckets which I see in the future that may sound easy but would be difficult to manage.
Absolutely. So, gentlemen, in that case, before we wrap up, in a nutshell, how would you say is your kind of key tenets and your key approach to navigating compliance 2024 and beyond? If you could kind of summarize that for all our viewers out there.
Just keep the rigor on all the time. Don't keep it loose.
Yes.
I think if you lose the focus, you will miss the track. I think that's my mantra for compliance. Not just compliance. I think in an organization, the code of conducts, controls, compliance, risk management. So I think for a CFO, it has to be a continuous daily agenda.
Yes.
Because you improve on these things on a daily basis, you learn on daily basis.
Yes.
So you have to basically keep an eye regularly.
Absolutely. Keep the focus.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nitesh?
Discipline is the main part.
Yeah.
So if you are disciplined enough, nothing can beat the discipline. If that is there, then I always take an example of athletes when we talk about discipline. It's the most tough job for any athlete to maintain the pace, right?
Yes,
So keep the discipline intact and inculcate that discipline into the entire organization. It will smoothen the entire process and operation. When each of us talk about the compliances, non-compliances regarding, and when we discuss a lot about this becomes a regular habit in the organization indulge. So that's how I see that 2024 should be.
Yeah, wonderful. You're
I
adding
think
something.
in my view, it's a culture,
Yes.
rather culture building in the organization.
Absolutely.
So,
of course. Like you started with saying, it's a top-down effect, ultimately. So focus, discipline, and company culture. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I do have one request and also a surprise for you, that we have a small rapid fire round.
okay.
Just to get a little more insight from you, but this has to be very rapid, very spontaneous.
Okay.
Some insights into the mind of a CFO, both in the boardroom but also out of the boardroom. So if you're okay with that, we have a few questions for you. All right. So I'll ask the same question to each of you and you can answer as quickly as you can. Vipul, starting with you. If you were writing a book about your finance journey, what would it be called?
Risk mitigation.
Okay. Nitesh?
Beautiful journey.
There you go. Very nice. What's the toughest financial challenge you've tackled?
I would say profitability in an organization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. How did you come out on top with that?
So profitability, again, as we mentioned in the beginning that, top line is basically CEO's agenda. So profitability is driven from various parameters. You continuously have to be cost focused. When I say cost focus, it is not cutting the cost, but cutting the wastage.
Yes. Okay.
You need to be compliant. As I mentioned, the cost of, any breach of compliance and controls, could be huge. So I think these 2-3 are, the continuous, focus agendas for the CFOs, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Nitesh?
One is taking along everyone in the journey and growing your team in such a way that you can take a back seat for some time and see a larger picture.
Yes, wonderful, beautiful. Have you ever had an aha moment when it comes to your finance role, when you were doing something not related to finance at all?
Many times.
Okay. One of them, your most interesting one.
Bad one or good one?
Bad always to start with, but good too, of course.
So I think I will remember, but whenever there's a crisis,
Yes.
every time it will come on to the CFO's desk.
Yes, of course.
Whatever happens in the organization. So I think, yeah, there are many aha moments.
Is there a moment in particular where you're doing something not related to finance where you had this aha about a solution?
Ah,
That's the question. Nitish, maybe you can
Many
chime in.
times, actually, when people start talking about you are not only a finance guy now, you have become a business guy.
Yes.
We
yes.
don't see you as a finance guy. So
Yes,
that's an
yes.
aha moment for all of us, because
Wonderful.
as a finance leader, we generally tend into कि यार finance समझता होगा,
Yeah.
Yeah.
overall business समझ आता होगा कि नहीं होता.
Sure.
That's like a aha moment for all of us when people start relying more on you.
Yes.
That if
So-
Nitesh is there, or if that guy is there, it will be managed very well.
yeah.
That's the aha moment for me.
Yeah, wonderful.
So for me, I can now relate. Aha moment is when any business guy is appreciating my team member.
Yes.
That you have
Wonderful.
really supported the business. That's
Sure.
always a aha moment for me. Not for me,
Yes,
but if
yes.
someone is appreciating my team guy, that's a big pleasure.
Wonderful. So in that case, if you can describe your approach to finance in one word, being not only the finance guy, but looking at the business as a whole. So if you can describe your approach to finance in one word, what would it be?
I think business guys are your biggest stakeholder in my view.
Yes.
So what I have learned, in my current organization, there are two types of persons, in the organization. One, who support the customer, and second, who support the person who is supporting the customer.
Yes. Yes. Sure. Yeah.
So for finance guys, I think the biggest internal stakeholders are all the functions, other functions, sales, ops, tax, everyone.
Yes. Yes. It's taking care of all the stakeholders,
Absolutely.
basically. Nitish?
Approach would be sustainability, to be
Yeah.
very honest. So
Yeah.
if you are sustainable enough in terms of your top line, in terms of your bottom line, you are through.
Yes.
So ultimately, for any CFO, the journey is an IPO,
Yes.
if we see, to be
Sure,
very honest.
yeah,
So that comes only with sustainability.
Sustainability. Wonderful. If you were not a CFO, what would you have been?
Oh, I would have been biking
Okay. Okay. there
on
you go.
roads.
Quite different. That's amazing. Yeah. Nitish?
I would have been a photographer.
Okay. Wow. There we go. We have some artists and athletes here now. It's wonderful. And finally, one reason why you love finance.
Finance, in my view, is the most critical function for any organization. And what I have seen that when you are a trained finance professional, probably you understand, that function the best
Yes.
as compared to any other person.
Sure. Yeah. Wonderful. Nitish?
I believe we act as a custodian, because ultimately you take along everyone along with.
Yes.
And-
yes.
And the another part is when you love numbers.
Yeah.
So only finance people can love numbers.
Absolutely.
Other all departments hate numbers, to be very honest. So
That's true.
that's the way. So when you talk about a custodian and takes care of everything, that gives you a lot of sense or kind of satisfaction in the,
Responsibility, satisfaction. Wonderful. Well, gentlemen, on that note, thank you so much. It's
Thank
been an
you.
absolute pleasure to have you
Thank
here
you.
today. Thank you for sharing all your insights about compliance 2024 and beyond, and also who you are both in the boardroom and out of the boardroom. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, on that note, we conclude this episode of ET CFO Presents ET Studio CFO Blueprint in association with SAP. Do remember to stay agile in the face of compliance challenges, leveraging the insights shared to drive your organization forward. And don't forget to search online for Grow with SAP for scale-ups. Until next time, many thanks for watching.